Salam sejahtera, anda bersama saya Cynthia Eng dalam Common Sense AWANI, satu program di mana kami membawakan sesi engagement untuk membincangkan laporan kewangan rakyat ke-95, dan sekali lagi bersama saya ialah Menteri Kewangan Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz. Terima kasih kerana bersama kami. Dan sebenarnya episod kedua ini adalah penerusan perbincangan mengenai sasaran ESG dan SDG yang dibincangkan pada episod pertama, dan tidak dapat dinafikan kelestarian itu menjadi semakin penting kerana selain menjaga keuntungan, perlunya adaptasi ESG dan juga SDG dalam setiap perkara, baik perniagaan ataupun di pihak kerajaan, policy making, policy level, agar kita dapat bersaing dengan lebih baik dalam masa hadapan. Dan kami juga ditemani oleh partisipan-partisipan dalam diskusi kali ini. Kami ada tiga daripada beberapa mereka ni adalah founder social enterprise, dan mereka melakukan banyak perkara yang meletakkan kelestarian sebagai sasaran utama. Dan kami juga akan memberi peluang kepada mereka untuk bertanyakan soalan kepada YB Menteri. Tetapi saya nak mula dahulu, Tengku Zafrul. Dalam episod sebelum ini, kita berbincang mengenai antara cabaran-cabaran yang dihadapi oleh PKS untuk mencapai matlamat ESG dan juga SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. Kami difahamkan bahawa kerajaan melalui bajet telah menggariskan beberapa langkah lagi untuk membantu PKS dan juga syarikat-syarikat dalam mencapai matlamat tersebut. Mungkin YB boleh kongsikan sedikit sebanyak apa yang kita boleh anticipate?
Ya, terima kasih Cynthia. Sebelum saya memberi penerangan mengenai SME, bagaimana mereka ni, saya nak bercerita sikitlah that I would like to say that Malaysia ni is among the 10 countries in the world that have fully aligned the national budget to the SDG. One of the 10 countries in the world. And of course, I want to also share that budget selepas ini kita akan pergi more aligned to also green budgeting to enable kita implementation of environmentally friendly development program and projects. So from budget 2022, budget tahun ini, initiative low carbon practices, environment dan juga biodiversity conservation dan juga community empowerment akan terus dilakukan untuk budget yang seterusnya. So yang penting ialah masa jangka panjang. We need to have a long view of Malaysia. So to make up ourselves a long-term proposition for investment, terutama untuk SME, we must make Malaysia more stable and more predictable compared to our regional peers. And then one of the ways is to actually promote sustainability ni in a big way. Sekarang ni kalau kita lihat, global ESG investment telah naik begitu banyak sekali. Global ESG asset sekarang valued at $35 trillion, US dollars, and is on track to exceed $50 trillion US dollars by 2025. So policy wise, kalau sebagai policy maker, this means that kita kena enable the whole ecosystem for us to get there. So this ecosystem does not include just financing, bukan saja financing, but also attracting the right investment and the right technology in the green and also in the sustainable space. So as you know, kita pun dah announce that we want to be carbon neutral. Yang Perdana Menteri telah mengumumkan kita nak menjadi carbon neutral seawal-awal 2050. But what is equally important moving forward is about tracking our progress, or ESG initiative. So just like how MOF monitor the progress of our stimulus and budget measures via our weekly Laksana report, we also need a mechanism to monitor the progress of ESG so we become more accountable to that. So of course now they call laporan kewangan rakyat, but we also need to do. So taking a leaf from my past corporate experience, I think firstly we need to remember and believe the importance of transparency. So transparency is important. So we must track the progress of our ESG initiative and closely, since of course it involves also taxpayers' money, and then bigger corporates also have a role to play in this way. Secondly, we need a mechanism. One is transparency. Second is a mechanism for tracking performance. That tracking performance is crucial. So this is why we need to ensure that the MOF and through the agency, in this case Laksana, to monitor the tracking and the progress and also the success and the outcome of this. The other one, thirdly, policy making shouldn't be just based on data. Should be based on data and science, not just gut feel. So we have in the last 2 years collected a lot of data and streamline useful data and help us guide how to be more effective in our implementation. So in a way on ESG as well, so we need to collect more data on what's happening and how we do this. So I mentioned in the previous program, and I would like to reiterate again today, when it comes to public spending, the government also has upped its game via the government green procurement, the GGP, and also the government social impact procurement program. So this again will help this industry to be embracing sustainability. So GGP, which is the government green procurement, is basically procurement for products, services and works that meet minimum environmental standards for protecting environment and also natural resources. At the same time, we want to minimize the negative effects of human activities. So in 2020, for example, the GDP was valued at approximately actually 590 million ringgit, and that's involving 26 ministries. So it's a big number.
There's a big plan as well, all those things that you have mentioned.
Yes.
Well, this is all obviously from the policy making level, government level, and I think you hit the nail on the head that it comes down to execution, also tracking the progress of all these measures that's been announced. Now, I would like to open the discussion to our participants right in front of me. I know some of them here are entrepreneurs, and they are actually doing sustainable initiatives through their business. For instance, I'd like to maybe go to Harith first. Harith he runs a shop called Green Factory, and he manufactures sustainable wood products. For an SME like yours, who is also exporting your products to different parts of the world, how do you see the initiatives or just the progress of discussions about going green and taking more measured initiative ways to be more sustainable?
Thank you for the question. So I'm Haris. I'm also known as the Green Carpenter, and my family started a wood manufacturing business in 1993. So since I was young, I would be going to the factory during school holiday. So people go holiday, I have to work. So every year I would do that until university. So I grew up in the industry. So when I come back and start working, I learn more about the industry. So our wood industry is one of the largest in the world. Malaysia produces products to more than 160 countries. However, there is a perception, especially from the Western countries, that Malaysian products are not sustainable. So it's a perception that I always get, and that is also, I think, 2012, we have one of the highest deforestation rate in the world. So it bothers me a lot. So at that time, I decided, okay, if I want to continue the family business, I want it to be in a greener side. So that is 10 years ago. Right now, we are focusing a lot on pushing the knowledge breeding of sustainable manufacturing here in Malaysia, and two, focusing a lot on development of local talents. So we right now look at SDG 1, where we work a lot with B40 communities, where we train them to be specialists and apprentice in the wood industry. And second, SDG 12, where we look more into the responsible consumption and manufacturing. So by doing that for about a decade, we see there's a lot of benefit that sustainability brings to the company. And right now we are sharing our story to more businesses as well, where we advocate more businesses to adopt sustainability, because it's done well for us, and we now see sustainability as a competitive advantage rather than just saving the environment.
Well, thanks for sharing, Hari. I think you hit some very important points. There is demand for green products. There is demand from the market to be sustainable, to do good while doing business. But I would like to pick your point about knowledge and also not just marketing our Malaysian companies. Besides wood products, of course, palm oil is another one that's been taken quite a hit. Malaysian palm oil in Europe, especially. Just wondering, YB Minister, on that. I mean, how do we improve marketing of our products, our services, and we have all these initiatives in place, measures in place, measurements, and also ambitions.
Of course. So the relevant agency, relevant ministries, it's important to understand the importance of not just marketing but also communication, and that communication is also really key, not just for our home, our domestic market, but also our international market. So here, I feel that we have been engaging various stakeholders, and it is becoming more competitive also outside that. And like what Hari said, the market for sustainability is also growing. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, the funds that are involved out there is huge, that wants to purchase products that are deemed sustainable, or products that meet the sustainability agenda. So in this case for Malaysia as well, we will continue to educate the public, because there's a lot of misinformation, to some extent even fake news about certain products. I mean you mentioned that they say it's from Malaysia, therefore the wood products are not meeting the minimum standard of ESG, or not complying with some of the SDGs. So this is something that is an ongoing process. The government has spent millions educating, marketing, communicating, but we will continue to do so, to also that people understand that we are on the road. We have a roadmap, and we have started this journey towards achieving better targets for our sustainability agenda.
I think not just having that roadmap, but also the roadmap that meets international and global
so it cannot
standards.
be just the domestic. Yeah.
Right. So I just want to talk a bit about some of your past experiences. Of course, you have been to the World Economic Forum in Davos. Resilience of local economies, particularly SMEs, is going to be a very key focus. Other than that, we talk about climate. Is going to be a key focus. Food security will be top of the agenda. Just wondering, what are your thoughts on how, based on your experience that we have seen elsewhere in these forums, what are your policy thoughts on how we can better integrate ESG principles within the ecosystem, especially SMEs or even micro enterprises?
Yeah. So in the earlier episode, I mentioned that the GLIC ecosystem for Malaysia is quite big. It's about 1.7 trillion ringgit. Which comprises actually thousands of SME suppliers and stakeholders. So, and this process has now been institutionalized through the launch of our principles for good governance. So EPF, for example, a month ago, launched the sustainable investment policies. So that means for better informed and holistic investment decisions by integrating all their EPF investment decision integrating with ESG consideration. So all their investment decision now is integrated with ESG consideration. So they launched the sustainable investment policy. That's EPF, our largest fund, which is 1 trillion ringgit of funds. And recently, PNB also launched their sustainability framework, in which they have set out to allocate 10 billion ringgit of fresh capital to invest specifically in green and transition assets by 2030 to support the PNB's commitment to achieve a net zero enterprise by 2025 and net zero portfolio by 2050. So this is a very ambitious target, but it has started the journey. That's the roadmap and the execution. And Khazanah as well, of which I'm on the board, also issued its responsible investment policy. So a few years back, this was launched and now underpins the investment standard on managing risk better to generate sustainable long-term value for its key stakeholders. So they announced recently 6 billion ringgit of Dana Impact. This is really focused on catalytic sectors to open new growth opportunities on building capacity on sustainability. Right. Bank Negara also, is also leading on various initiatives. They have the CCPT, which is the climate change principles-based taxonomy, right? And this really is, they plan to have mandatory climate risk disclosures by financial institutions. So all financial institutions going forward have to have disclosures, what's the risk disclosures, as well as industry-wide climate change stress tests at counterparty level, so they have stress tests on some of the loans, and this is scheduled for implementation in 2024. That progress also start. So in one of the World Economic Forums that I was actively involved in, developing capacity in the SME space is one of the key building blocks to achieve our ESG aspirations and our net zero target by 2050. So apart from having the GLICs as our key implementers of our ESG policies, our panelists, invited panelists here, are also key to achieve that. Because we need the critical mass and to achieve the national target. It's not enough just for the big multinational to achieve that net zero 2050. It's not just the large company, and we need to build capacity today for the SME as well. And that is not just getting through the right technology, but also by developing our educational foundation as well, right? Education foundation and human capital to be more ESG oriented, because there's also the demand side, right? So you can see the exporters exporting outside because the demand, international demand, they want this. So similarly, I think it's a matter of time when even our domestic consumers will also demand at the same thing, and we need to equip our SMEs to be ready for that. So in the upcoming budget 2023, we will have our regular engagement process, again with the various stakeholders that we've done the last 2 years. And for the first time in MOF and the country history, we actually issued a pre-budget statement for budget 2022 and invited the public to comment, and we will be doing the same this year.
I want to talk about the S in the ESG. So we've got environment, we've got social. Governance we talked about quite a bit earlier in the first episode. So social is, for me, it's probably one of the biggest threats, if we talk about, say, climate change. On a whole, yes, it affects the environment, but what it leads to is more floods, and then that leads to displacement, for example. So I want to talk about this because I want to bring Lakshmin into this discussion. So because Lakshmin runs a non-profit focused on using entrepreneurship to empower B40 women living in low-income communities in Sabah and KL. Why just women, not men? We'll get Lakshmin to answer that a bit more later. But I think what I want to get at is the impact at the end of the day will be on us people. You know, the impact on the tree, on the river, on development, it all comes down to us. And what are you seeing on ground and these measures that he's mentioned?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So I think some of the good policies that we've seen is investments into more organizations and foundations like Yayasan Hasana, which trickle down to grassroots organizations like us and allow us to invest more into communities, which then allows us to better understand the community and develop leaders in that community. It also gives us opportunities to bring in other partners into the community so that we can practice a more community-based approach in supporting communities. And from that whole experience, what we've seen is really the strength and the importance of leveraging on community leaders within these communities. And as part of our program, we use entrepreneurship, as you mentioned, to develop women entrepreneurs, and then we select some of them to be developed as community leaders so that they can work with us to conduct needs assessments and also discuss with other stakeholders on what initiatives should be implemented in their community and how it can be implemented. And I think why it's so important to work with community leaders is because they know their community best, right? They've been living there for ages, 10, 20, 30 years sometimes. They know every family, they know what will work, what challenges you're going to face, and that will make our investments even more effective. So that's definitely something that I've seen it's an opportunity that we can take in future initiatives and policies. And for example, some of the ladies that we've worked with, like Misha, Eza, Sheila, they've worked with us to identify that, hey, actually my community needs a sewing center, it needs a community kitchen, it needs a business center, so that we can work together as women entrepreneurs to support one another and get new ideas and collaborate on larger businesses. So that's also added a larger impact in the community and also in a more sustainable way.
I would like to turn the discussion to Zazila. Zazila Roslan, she runs the Ezplast Sabah, which is a social enterprise that creates product from plastic waste. So the past 2 years, we have seen so much negative impact from the pandemic. But if we could choose one silver lining from it, is that the acceleration of digital adoption,
yes.
right? And I think that could probably help lower down some of the challenges or the gaps in terms of, advancing the initiatives of SDG and also ESG. Maybe from your experience, how does tech how do you implement tech, and how does it help you in advancing some of the things that you're doing in your community?
Okay, so thank you for the question. Well, I'm putting my hat as the president of Sabah Social Entrepreneur Association because I saw the development in Sabah in the different landscape. So in Sabah, we have 62 members of social entrepreneurship and more in the pipeline wanted to be registered. So I'm talking about the gap between Sabah and West Malaysia. So I think we are in the baby step of crawling into the SDG and ESG. But the initiative that we do actually is to spread an awareness as early as they adopt social enterprise business model to implement SDG as a framework in their enterprise. So for example, my friend Bruti and Besi, Harith know them. So they are trying to reduce carbon emission as early as micro as they operate, and also they are doing the good governance in the management level. So I also witness SE when we spread this awareness. I also witness SE, social enterprise, small social enterprise in the community. They produce product-based community. So what they do is they want to try to use the eco-friendly packaging. So it's a quite challenge to have eco-friendly packaging in Sabah because we didn't really have too much option. So we have to buy it from West Malaysia, and we have to package it in Sabah, and we have to send it again. So in terms of tech, for green tech, you are supposed to mean the green tech or any tech in the SE. So we have social enterprise who have been helping these farmers to market their product in digitalize their product in Shopee, Lazada, something like that. So what I'm trying to say is, with the help of tech in Sabah, is more can help our development more faster, and we can close the gap from here in West Malaysia.
I think that's the challenge in governing, right? I mean, at the same time, you want to look ahead on best practices while also ensuring that people are not left out on the basic, the gap, the development. A couple of minutes left, so I just want to throw this opportunity to you guys to give our YB Minister some really hard questions. So yes, here you go.
One of my input is more on the green procurement. For example, we have been making furniture for the school in Malaysia for more than 26 years, and what we are trying to do right now is to push more to change a little bit of spec to make that the school furniture be green. So right now, when we talk about sustainability, it's not just the material, it's the glue that we use, the coating that we use, even some of the process. So we want to be able to say that Malaysia is one of the few countries that have green furniture in their school. So I think like this kind of initiatives needs to be done because it's more of the mass scale. So if it's in the spec, then all the other manufacturer that wants to supply will have to comply to that. So by having that green procurement, it helps. And another thing is more on the education, because sustainability is fairly new space. And in terms of manufacturing, we are baby steps. So that's why for us as well, we've been doing it for 10 years. We look into sustainable manufacturing and sustainable processes, and we noticed that a lot of these green manufacturing practices actually can be beneficial for the company. For example, we get better margins. We get a flock of talents coming in to be part of us, and also we have reduced costs. So by having this kind of stories or this kind of knowledge development more on this side, the manufacturing side, it will have better impacts. So putting more emphasis on the manufacturing side is one of the things that I would recommend doing as well.
I think those very good recommendations, and of course the first one we are already starting that process, and we hope that with this kind of procurement policies, more companies will then start to see the importance of embracing sustainability. The problem is there is a view or perception, and some are true or some are not, is that link between ESG and companies' bottom line, right? So they say that ESG, if you do ESG, the bottom line shrinks, right? But actually, ESG considerations do make good business sense, right? You talked about the floods and all that, So if you implement correctly, this actually will help safeguard the companies against external volatilities and business risks. Sometimes you do development and everything without considering, I want to make a lot of profit, so you don't take into consideration the risks, right? And then when things happen, and then you can see that it actually affects the long-term sustainability of the company itself. So, for example, your company is a good example. Hari's company is a good example where, it's an SME manufacturer, protecting the environment by adopting green tech and also environmentally friendly business operations. I believe will actually safeguard itself against future legal suits, for example. I will say, for pollution, right, by local communities. I mean, we've seen that, we saw some factories doing the river before, and also better governance, which is what I believe you're doing, is also, having better governance actually lead to better risk management, which actually often lead to improve profitability. So we need to also delink that myth that if you embrace ESG now, the cost will go up, your profitability will go down. But actually in the long term, even in the short term, where the demand is coming in now today, as we can see, it is actually good for companies, SMEs, to start embracing and adopting and investing, because you need to invest to ensure that you are, let's say, ESG ready, right?
I think for a lot of companies, especially corporations, is trying to look beyond that quarterly revenue or the yearly revenue and taking a long-term approach to mapping up your goals. And we have about 2 minutes left. I'll open this up to Ashwin.
Yeah, if I may, just going back to an earlier point as well, maybe a suggestion to really look at how we can further invest in communities, especially in developing shared community resources, such as youth centers, business centers, digital centers, because although there may be initiatives, communities sometimes need more hand-holding and need opportunities and platforms to support one another. And we have seen through studies in other countries especially, the relationship between more support services and improved relationships between community members, and how that has improved their resilience towards disasters because they have a support system. So maybe in our experience, that's something that we would like to suggest, to really see how we can leverage off the community strengths and give them the tools they need to support one another in a sustainable manner.
Yeah, I think that's a very good suggestion.
I think we'll have to continue this discussion after, because this is all the time that we have today. Thank you so much, Lakshmin, Harith, our participants, and also Zazila, for sharing your thoughts with us and also with YB Menteri. Dan itu sahaja masa kita ada untuk program sesi engagement Common Sense at Awani. Dan terima kasih sekali lagi kepada YB Menteri Tengku Zafrul.
Menjemput saya.
Itu sahaja masa kita ada, dan kita jumpa lagi. Salam hormat, saya Seri. Bye.